It was the serial killer movie that ushered in a new era of true crime horror filmmaking. So brutal was the violence in this dramatic recreation of the grisly crimes by Henry Lee Lucas that the MPAA branded the film with an X rating, leading to numerous film distributors shunning the John McNaughton directed film. Despite the obstacles, McNaughton would go on to release his bloody magnus opus to the acclaim of critics and horror audiences, launching the career of its star Michael Rooker. In today's Cinefile, Matt's Movie Reviews looks at the making and legacy of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is a fictionalized account of serial killer Henry Lee Lucas, who stalks the streets of Chicago hunting for his next victim. Killing with impunity, Henry will be joined by his former prison buddy and current roommate Otis Toole. The dynamic between these natural-born killers is complicated by the arrival of Otis's sister, Becky, who develops feelings for Henry. The director of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is John McNaughton, a Chicago-based filmmaker who in 1984 received critical acclaim for Dealers in Death, a documentary about gangsters in Chicago during the 1930s. The producers of Dealers in Death were Malik B. Ali and Waleed Ali, who ran MPI Video, an Illinois-based video equipment rental business. The Ali brothers wanted McNaughton to next direct a documentary on the 1950s Chicago wrestling scene through their production company, Malik Productions. When that project was cancelled, the Ali brothers gave McNaughton $110,000 to make a horror movie. Said Waleed Ali in a 1990 interview with Cinefile. The idea was to deliver a film that looked and played as well as any other film that would come out of Hollywood. We felt that with the right resources, we could make a picture that could deliver at a number of different levels, not just be another mad slasher horror film. McNaughton found the idea for his horror film when he watched a segment on Current Affairs Show 2020 about Henry Lee Lucas, a serial killer who infamously claimed to have murdered over 600 people between the years of 1975 to 1983. Over the years, it was revealed that the majority of Lucas's confessions to these murders were false. Nevertheless, he would be found guilty of 11 murders, although some believe the body count could be as high as 40. Said McNaughton to Cinefile, Lucas's story is so horrible because it's real. He would ride around and either swerve his car to hit a hitchhiker or pull over and kill them with a gun. He travelled with a friend named Otis. In one interview we saw, Lucas was describing how Otis once tried to eat a corpse, but Lucas told him, "Don't do that." He had his own code. Funny value is tied up with this murderous urge. Steve Jones, a commercial director with deep ties in the Chicago production community, joined Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer as a producer. Jones would bring a number of people to the production, most notably Richard Fire, who would co-write the script with McNaughton. Said McNaughton in an interview found on YouTube, "We tried to do something entirely new. We were making a horror film and they usually involve monsters, and of course we don't have the money or inclination to do an out-of-space monster. But indeed this character, which is based on this true person, is a monster but also a human being. We also thought we would redefine the horror genre. Yes, we were trying to make a horror film, but we wanted to make one unlike any other." The casting for Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer was held in Richard Fire's apartment. As the film was a low-budget horror feature, many people from the Chicago theatre looked down on the project, with one young actor flat out rejecting the role of Henry when offered. It was special effects makeup designer Jeff Spiegel who recommended the Alabama-born Michael Rooker for the role of Henry. Rooker showed up to the audition in character, wearing the clothes he would go on to wear as Henry throughout the film. It was a move that both frightened and elated McNaughton, who declared, "This guy is going to be a movie star." Cast in the role of siblings Otis and Becky were Tom Towers and Tracy Arnold, who, like Richard Fire, came from the prestigious Organic Theatre Company, which was founded by legendary horror director Stuart Gordon. Said Towers in the 2005 documentary Portrait, The Making of Henry, Part of the entire process was literally weeks of research before we actually started shooting, watching every piece of film that John and Richard had collected, every article they had accumulated. Then our natural sense of theatrical license takes over. Oh, we can go there. Oh yeah, we can do that. Filming on Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer began in 1985. Shot on 16mm in less than a month, Henry saw McNaughton employ a cinema verite filmmaking style that not only suited the film's low budget, but brought a grounded grittiness to his serial killer movie. Also of note is that while Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer was set in Chicago, the real John Henry Lucas and Otis Toole were never in the city. Rooker stayed in character throughout the month-long shoot, even offset where he refused to socialise with any of the cast and crew. According to costume designer Patricia Hart on the 2005 documentary Portrait Making of Henry, she could not discern whether she was talking to Rooker or Henry during their interactions, as he would sometimes talk about his past as if he were the serial killer. Rooker also convinced cinematographer Charlie Lieberman to allow him to shoot the now infamous home invasion scene, a creative decision that worked, with many citing the scene as the most memorable and disturbing in the film. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer premiered at the Chicago International Film Festival in 1986, where it was entered in the Saturday afternoon Chicago's Filmmaker program as a 1-inch videotape. The film immediately garnered critical acclaim and controversy, the latter due to the film's graphic, violent content. Despite successful showings at numerous film festivals throughout the late 1980s, McDonough found himself at the mercy of the MPAA, who slapped Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, with an X rating, a move that made finding distribution for the film near impossible, with the now defunct Vestron Pictures and Atlantic releasing both foregoing plans to take on the film. New Line Cinema expressed interest sometime later, but decided not to go ahead as they felt the film passed its expiration date. It was around this time that Chuck Perello, a writer for a Chicago publication called Screen, received a copy of Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer on video from MPI. Said Perello in an interview with Cinefantastique, "I got the tape, brought it home and buried it under a pile of things. 2 months later I found it and decided to take a look at it. I was blown away. It's one of the great American films out there, and I say that without a grin on my face. I think it redefines everything a film can do for an audience." MPI hired Perello as a publicity director, and he went to work on getting Henry into theaters. Perello first convinced the owners of the Music Box, a Chicago theater that specializes in alternate tastes, to play the film. Henry will go on to be a cult hit with the Music Box crowd, and the film was booked every night at midnight. Perello then sent a video to New York mad artist Joel Coleman, who ran The Late Show, a Manhattan-based spot known for screening offbeat movies. It is where Elliot Stern, film critic for The Village Voice, viewed Henry and called it the best American film I've seen this year. While McNaughton and MPI tried to secure theatrical distribution, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer began to develop a cult following amongst a videotape trading crowd. Rooker, who became known to casting agents who saw Henry and would secure roles in the likes of Mississippi Burning and Sea of Love, found himself in the unique situation of people recognizing him from a film that hadn't been released yet. Said Rooker in an interview with RogerEbert.com, "People had seen it. As a matter of fact, I had done Sea of Love and Mississippi Burning, but the first time I ever got recognized in public was on Ventura Boulevard in a car. The guy in the car next to me kept following me and looking at me. I was thinking that I'm a Chicago guy and that I might have to get out of my car and take care of this guy. That is just the way I'm thinking. He comes up and rolls down his window, and I roll my window down, and I'm going, yeah? He goes, Henry Lee Lucas!" Unable to find a distributor, McNaughton took the initiative to self-distribute the film as unrated to avoid the dreaded X certificate. 4 years after Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer had its premiere at the Chicago International Film Festival, the film had its theatrical release on January 5, 1990. Critical acclaim was mostly positive, with legendary film critic Roger Ebert declaring that Henry was a low-budget tour de force that provides an unforgettable portrait of the pathology of a man for whom killing is not a crime but simply a way of passing time and relieving boredom. Reports also came from screenings of audiences leaving theatres shell-shocked, with some especially traumatized by the home invasion scene, which led to debate about the depiction of violence on screen. Said Parello to Cinefantastique, "The film works because it delves into taboos that have never been dealt with like this before. Child murders, incest. They've never been depicted so matter-of-factly. There's no suspense in the movie. It's just there in front of you and you have to take it for what it's worth. There's no relief, morally or otherwise. It makes people think. That's why it's devastating for some people." Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer was a game changer not only in the fight between art and censorship, but also in the way McNaughton brought a new level of gritty realism to a horror genre preoccupied with supernatural killers that, while would haunt our nightmares, would not stalk our streets. Said McNaughton to The Guardian, "The monster is indeed real. He walks around us in the world, from town to town, perhaps even yours, and he is waiting outside the cinema for his next victim to be chosen at random." Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.